I'm Derek Pryor with Resulting, formerly a Gartner and analyst in SAP. Today I'm in the Resulting STEM studio with Nick to discuss the value a critical friend brings to the SAP program. But I think, Nick, before we get started, do you think it would make sense if we just explained the business-side consulting that Resulting does before we position this?
Yeah, sure, Derek. So I guess by business-side consulting, what we really mean is where we focused our efforts over the last few years is working directly with the business, so not in the traditional space that system implementation partners would play in, or the technology companies. The reason for doing that is most organisations don't go through large SAP implementations all of the time. They don't typically have those types of skills in-house. They might have technology skills in-house. They might already have an SAP Centre of Excellence, for example. But you don't normally have the types of resources who've been through large-scale business transformations, because really it's not something you want to do every one or 2 years. It's something you do every 5-10 years or maybe even longer. So we've identified that that's an area where businesses do need help, and they need that type of independent advisory service where really there's no agenda other than wanting the business to be successful. And that's why we've also had such a strong focus recently on building self-sufficiency within a client's own organisation. You don't want to be dependent on external advisors all the way through your programme. And that's really why we've often played that role of critical friend, and probably worth just describing what we mean by that. So a critical friend is really, typically it's an external advisor, and usually it's somebody who's not as close to the programme, so not somebody who's necessarily working alongside the programme director or the CFO or the CIO day in, day out. They're typically there as a sounding board to provide an external perspective. And that's really important, and it really doesn't matter what level of seniority you are. Everybody, every now and again, just needs to bounce a few ideas off somebody. So critical friend forms has many different guises. It can just be that sounding board, or often it can be a requirement for very specific input into key areas. Because again, many CFOs or program directors may be going through this, maybe not for the first time, but it could be different. There could be nuances that they're not familiar with. So having someone who you can just pick up the phone and call, or come into one of your key program meetings. The independence part is key. You have to be truly independent. If you've got a vested interest, it's very difficult to be a critical friend. It's about independent advice as and when it's needed.
Sounds great. I guess to be successful, you're going to have to be brutally honest to be a real critical friend. And I suppose the next question following on from that is, well, who would be the critical friend to? Would it be to the senior stakeholders? Would it be to the PMO or to the CIO? What sort of level?
It is usually to the C-level suite or to the program directors.
Yeah.
And you touched on it there. The key thing is it's a critical friend. Sometimes, as we know, outside of work, your best friends are the ones who give you the best advice, because it's the most honest assessment, even if it's just what you're wearing on a night out and you think you look fantastic, and you've got a great critical friend who says, definitely not, you need to go and get changed. That's a good critical friend, which they're prepared to call it out and say it as it is. But to be able to do that, there has to be implicit trust in that relationship. If they don't trust you and you're giving them critical but constructive advice, that can make for a very difficult relationship. So typically when we've done critical friend roles, it's with people that we know well, that we've had long-standing relationships with, who've called us in, maybe just to do 1 or 2 days a month, or to join key program calls, to review documentation, to provide a perspective. But you've got to be honest, otherwise the value is completely diminished.
Yeah. Can you give us any example situations where the critical friend has had to give some particular feedback that was surprising or real, very high significance?
Yeah, I think sometimes just a reality check, particularly when on large programs, if you're reporting to whether you have a regular steerco meeting or a program board. sometimes they will look for the critical friend to provide another perspective. Sometimes if you look at all of the analysis that's coming from the programme, it's building a picture of where the programme's at, but sometimes the critical friend can add that nuance, which is, all of that's absolutely valid, but let's not forget about this important area. It can add a huge amount of value. I think it often holds people to account as well. So if you know that your critical friend is going to give you that type of feedback, then it drives a degree of honesty in the way that you report and the way that you assess your progress as well. So it plays a key role across the whole programme, not just for the one-to-one relationship with the critical friend, but it's such an important factor, but honesty and trust are absolutely key.
The way you describe it, Nick, it makes perfect sense. So when you think about it, it's hard to think of a big SAP program. Why wouldn't it have one? So you've made a lot of good points there. Maybe you could just sum everything up for the SAP customer if they hadn't thought about this approach before.
I think it is. We believe it's vitally important. Not every program does this, and I think sometimes the waters can be a little bit muddied. So you have typically a strong relationship with your SI, and your SI is probably reporting into your program board at a senior level. But again, typically there's a relationship there for a different reason, and there's a vested interest. Sometimes you might have one of the external big consulting or advisory firms doing your program assurance, and they do provide that type of critical friend aspect, but not every program has that type of assurance program running alongside it. So that's why I believe every program and people in those senior positions do just need somebody, and it doesn't have to be full-time, as we've said. It can be very much as needed on an ad hoc basis. But whether it's just bouncing ideas off somebody or whether it's more formal input and advice, it doesn't really matter. But being able to get another truly independent perspective is, in our view, really key to the success of any SAP program.
Well, Nick, you've made some great points there. Thanks so much. And for anybody that'd like to find out more about the ways of becoming more successful at SAP, please do check out our SAP Success Report on the resulting website. Thank you very much.
Thank you.